So I've been requested to make a little tutorial video kind of explaining my art process. The first stage is the sketching stage. I do a loose sketch for the pose. Usually I do a very small sketch, and then I expand it on the canvas. I kind of sketch over it. Once I'm satisfied with it, I often will like kind of select areas, resize them, rotate them, sometimes flip the canvas just to make sure it looks good. That always helps. Sometimes I forget, I'm gonna be honest. And once that's all taken care of, I move on to the line art. This stage doesn't usually take too long, maybe a few minutes. Um, I can usually get through them pretty fast. I picked a portrait for this specifically because I didn't have to get into too many composition details. If I'm doing a bigger piece, then sometimes it can take longer. I have to figure out how I'm going to pose them, how I'm going to incorporate the background in there, that kind of thing. But I want to mostly talk about coloring, but I feel like to talk about coloring, I should show the entire process and how that all kind of plays in together. And watching this back, I think I did a loose sketch, and then I went over that sketch, and definitely this is not the final sketch. I'm going to come in and do some more here. More rotating, that whole kind of thing. For line arts, I don't really aim for perfection. Like, I want to keep some of the life in the piece that was in there, from the beginning. I feel like sketches have a lot of life and movement to them, and sometimes in your line art you can kind of lose that and they look very stiff and not like boring, but they lose a lot of the like visual intrigue I feel like they kind of have when they look a little bit messier. So I let my line arts kind of sometimes keep that messy look. I feel like it helps. For line art color, for sketch color, I like to keep everything to kind of a dark brown shade. I feel like that blends better with the overall coloring of the piece. And if you use a black line art, you can just kind of lose that. Black doesn't blend that well with other colors. If you're going for contrast or like something very very cartoony, like that can totally work. It's just for what I do, I don't think it quite works that well. I like a lot of like softer, warmer, kind of watercolory aesthetics, and brown is just a fantastic color to use for that kind of thing. I also often have the background this kind of color, like a sort of like a beigey color. I did it here a little bit later in the drawing because I have to go in with some whites after this, but I also find that it's helpful to do that early on too. It's very much easier on the eyes to look at while you're sketching. And in preparation for the coloring stage, I obviously had the background darker, especially for this, but I also go in with a white and I just kind of trace over the whole drawing. I'm gonna make it a big flat white backdrop just on the character. The reason I do that is because then I can use the magic wand to select the area, and then I can go and color that and just reuse that for the entire coloring process. It's very helpful. But also if I want to, like, say, lower the opacity of my colors, be more watercolory and soft, I'm not going to make the character look transparent if I put a background behind them. And for base colors, I color pick a lot, often even from like my own work, other people's work, whatever the reference is. And then from there, I'll kind of like lower the opacity and go in with more shading, stuff to kind of add that dimension and that life to it. Color picking, I just do it to keep their colors consistent. I can color match pretty well, but I don't really do it unless I have to. Like if the base colors are something I can't work with, or if I'm drawing like a portrait of like a photo of someone that I have to kind of color match, color picking doesn't work a lot in those cases. But for something like this where I already drew the character and I can just take my own artwork, yeah, it's much easier. And for we're not quite at the shading stage yet. This is technically a new design of the same character that you saw me color picking from, but I wanted to keep the overall outfit and everything pretty much the same in terms of color palette. Part of character design, even if you change the outfit, it's important to keep at least some similarity there so they're very recognizable. And this is a little thing here. The fluff and like the hair are supposed to be white, but just like I don't like using straight blacks, I don't often use straight whites either for colors. Mostly because again, I find that they're not very good for blending, for adding shading, for all that kind of stuff. They just kind of like they don't have like the same malleability. I feel like they look a little bit less natural. And now that we're on the shading, for this, I take a watercolor brush, I make it typically a very dark red, and I just kind of go and I soft shade the art piece. I usually put the multiply effect on both, of course, the shading and then on the line art as well. Part of why I pick brown, it just works so much better for this. And then lower the opacity of that shading a bit. Kind of just whatever you think is going to look good for the sort of lighting that you want for this, harsh or soft. It depends on the piece. For this is sort of my deeper shading. I pick a darker purple. I'm on the same layer as I am with the soft shade, and I just go in with the paintbrush and I add some harder shading in there just to add a bit more shape. Going from dark red to dark purple just kind of mimics how like, real natural light works. It helps make the character more pleasant to look at. I don't use black for shading. It's kind of the same reason I use it for line arts. It doesn't blend in. It just kind of looks a little bit unnatural and unappealing. And also for this, it's really good to have an idea of where the light source is coming from in your drawing. So I don't really draw references for it anymore. I just kind of figure, okay, it's coming from this side or it's coming from this corner, and then I go from there. But if you have to draw a reference from where it's coming from, like, go for it. Absolutely. Whatever helps you. And then on to highlights. Highlights, I usually pick a soft kind of pale yellow color, and I use the glow effect, and then I just like lower the opacity where I need to, and then I go on another layer and, similar color, and I use the pencil, and I add some harsher lights on smaller areas. Again, just keeping in mind where your light source is coming from. And this is good because you can really rinse repeat this method um, with different colors to showcase different like environments with your lighting. I think that works very well. Like if you're doing natural lighting, red, purple, yellow. Those are very good if you're doing, nighttime lighting. You can use dark blue, softer silvers, soft purples. It's very good for that as well. And then I do sort of an overall show what you saw me do, where I have the gradient and I just go over the whole thing and I erase some areas. It blends everything together. It brings the piece together. Um, and then I added a little bit of extra harsh lighting on each side for some flare. Again, more dimension. And now I'm going over the edges, of course, with the ink brush just to soften them out, because when you're using the, like, magic wand tool to color things, you often wind up having to, like, you have those kind of, like, harsh edges because it can't quite round them out yourself. So I do that manually. I just color pick around the edge, and I pick whatever works the best for it. And I just go over the whole image like that. And I didn't quite go into this, but on one of the corners of the character, I took a watercolor brush, had like a off-white color, and I just kind of brushed it over it. I lowered the opacity to, like what I thought looked good. That's just to kind of show distance and kind of keep adding to that dimension with the character. Um, I think that might be it. The blue square in the background, again, that's just to kind of make it so the portrait isn't just in like this dead white space. And also to help the viewer's eye, like any little thing you can do like that to sort of keep the viewer looking at the drawing longer, those are always really good tools. I find that that helps a lot. And I hope this helped. Thank you for watching. If it was useful, use any of this. Go for it. And have yourself a great day.